Want to stop juggling spreadsheets, calendars, and a dozen apps just to run your rentals? Lodgify makes it easy. It's an all-in-one toolkit for hosts. Build a direct booking website, automate guest messaging, and keep all your channels in sync. Running your rental business your way has never been simpler. And for Good Morning Hospitality listeners, you can get 20% off any yearly plan with code GMH20. Just check the link in the show notes to get started today.
Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information that you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning.
Hello, hello. We're back after all of us were on the road last week.
Yes, all back at home finally. My voice, apologies to the listener, it barely survived GuestyVal, so we're in like recovery mode right now.
Yeah, happy Monday.
There you go. We had to work it in somewhere. Best day of the week. We're back. A little tired this morning, not gonna lie, but that's all right. We'll get back into it. I'm used to doing same old, not flying to Mexico and back. So here we are, getting readjusted.
I know. I had a moment, like, when you're just like so ready to get home, and we land in Miami and we're a couple minutes early, always a win. And then the pilot's like, the ramp is closed due to lightning, and we just have to sit here in this tin can in the lightning field until it passes. So we landed early, and then we sat for 35 minutes on the tarmac, and I was just like, get me home.
You win some, you lose some. But on today's show, we're excited to talk about some of the themes that Brandy and I heard down at GuestyVal in Mexico City. And also Jamie's got some information and data to share about a couple of topics, but New York, and it's been, 1 year, Jamie, since the ban?
2 years.
2 years. My goodness. Well, we see the cross of death in New York City's Airbnb numbers. We're excited to share that with you all in the second half of the show. But Brandy, you were on stage as much as anybody down in Mexico City. I think there were 3 key themes that I kept hearing both on stage and around the vendor halls and at dinner time and whatnot. What was one that was most interesting to you?
I do think the concept of the unreasonable hospitality and how people are trying to like apply that really in their daily operations. Will Gudar's, I can never say his last name, but his book, there you go, Jamie has it on screen, is an incredible book. And I think it really like touched all of us in the industry in a way of like trying to provide a really great guest experience. And one thing that really stood out for me, so we did a couple of interviews with people from Guesty, operators, vendors, kind of like getting a sample of everyone. And we talked with Daniel from Mi Casa es Tu Casa, a really large Mexican operator. He has the largest Airbnb account in Latin America, over 17,000 reviews, and he has a 4.88. And that is just insane. If you are a operator, you know how difficult that is. And so, but it was listening, like his theme of like how they do their check-ins, how they really take care of their guests was, I thought, like really inspirational. And I was hearing that from in like different ways from other operators, how they are trying to use technology to make their businesses more efficient and kind of save some money, but then also trying to re-inject hospitality at some level throughout the guest experience to kind of get back what we've lost. So I thought that was like kind of a cool theme throughout the week.
Yeah. And one of those was personalization, right? You know who's coming to stay with you, but how many times have you guys received a handwritten note or something with your name on it in the unit, or even something with your name on it in the check-in process? It just doesn't really happen anymore. And we've automated our way out of hospitality, much less unreasonable hospitality. And if anyone wants some anecdotes on our rental in Mexico City, more than happy to chat with you. But there's a handful of examples of very not great hospitality.
Yeah, I also think another theme that for me was surprising in a positive way was the optimism about the coming year. I think that I don't know, it's been like a tense year for a lot of people in terms of what's going on in the economy, what's going on in their own businesses. But there were people, especially people who have maybe new investors. There's like a fresh wave of people that are ready to take on the challenges of the coming moments and seem like very prepped and prepared and positive for that. And I thought that was a much needed morale boost, I think, at least for me personally, being like, okay, there's this wave of people that are really ready to take off regardless of what happens in the coming months.
Yeah, I think as an industry really struggled in 2024, and any founders that, made it out are naturally optimistic because it was one of the hardest segments of the industry since COVID, which was kind of artificially forced upon us. So I think the industry naturally is going to have more optimism because, really there's only one way to go from here. And a lot of that I heard in the halls and in discussions was there's a lot of frustration over the oversupply and saturation in short-term rental markets. So many people have tried to rent their house out. It's a easy way to make money, and it's fast,
passive
quick money.
Income.
Yeah, passive income. There's no work involved. Just automate everything and lose all of hospitality. So there's definitely some lingering frustrations with how much Airbnb pushed supply. And I do think we're starting to see some cracks over Airbnb in a good way, focusing now on quality of supply, not just supply. And we'll see. I think Brian's chatting at Skift Global Forum tomorrow or Wednesday. So I'm excited to tune in. Rafit, please ask questions about that, the balance between oversupply and quality supply. Also curious on their hotel push and inventory there, but that's an aside. But yeah, I think a lot of people's struggles do boil down to this oversupply, which, I mean, we've shared the data many times on the show. Too much supply and demand is increasing, but not at the same pace. So it feels like a decrease in demand.
Yeah. And I don't think we want to get into industry performance now, but it does feel like things have stabilized. It does, we're down from the occupancy levels of 2021 and 2022, but I get the sense talking with more and more operators, it feels more steady, and not that we're continuing seeing pressure down. It's like, I wish I was earning the revenues of 2021 and 2022, but it's not. I don't get the feeling that most people are like this year just is getting crushed compared to last year. Did you guys hear that at all?
Yeah, and I also think that people recognize that those years were not real years, in terms of benchmarking. It's not maybe their homeowners think so, but I think the operators are more savvy than that.
I did have a question for you guys, though, because last time for me that Gusty was really in the news was the Skift Short-Term Rental Forum in 2014. And one of the highlights coming out of that was Gusty talking about a potential IPO in 2025. Was there any chatter about whether or not Gusty was going to go public, and was that a question on stage at all?
That was not a topic they readily discussed. And quite frankly, it wasn't one, with the exception of some blunt questions to some of the executives from me off camera. But I think the expectation is in the coming couple of years. They don't have to be in any rush, and also the market is still not the most IPO friendly, although there's been a number of successful IPOs in the past few months. So that's great news. But all in all, I mean, I think there is that expectation sooner rather than later, but certainly nothing that I heard publicly. Brandy?
No, I would agree with that. I think they're doing they're laying the groundwork for a lot of things, right? So they have this great new rebrand. I will say, I mean, the production quality of this conference was really crazy. I mean, it's really, really, really well done. And I think when you compare that to other conferences in the industry, obviously Guesty has like a ton of money, right? And money kind of solves all those problems, but it also just is like you could make it nicer, right? Like these other conferences don't have to be kind of like beige conference halls that are boring
Sterile.
and
Yeah.
sterile, exactly, with like just increasingly crappier food. Like I don't know how each conference the food gets worse usually. So not that you have to have the beautiful production that Guesty had, but like we could level up a little bit across the industry and maybe more people would buy tickets.
Yeah, look, it starts with the spaces and the energy and the crowd. And I think the Guesty user skews a little younger, a little more global, so a little more energy. And then the spaces that they selected were perfect size for the amount of people that they had. It never felt empty, and it never felt way too crowded. And I heard somebody say this. Well, I heard it a couple of times, so I guess it was going around the event. GuestyVal is like Formula One, and Verma is like NASCAR, just like totally different types of energy levels and sizes. And I think, it does certainly set the bar for the industry on how to produce an event. And it's also one of those things where everybody went to the dinners at night or the cocktail hours. Everybody, like, you don't see that at Verma. Half the people go to the cocktail hour at Verma, but it felt like 90% of the Guesty users were at the after show events, which was a home run.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting to see how the other big PMSs like play catch up. Guesty is really pushing out a lot of new product improvements, really doing a lot to like raise the bar. And everybody has their feelings about like all-in-one versus building your own tech stack and everything. But even regardless of where you fall on that spectrum, like the other PM, like there's a high bar of like actual, not just like the surface level, it looks nice, but like what the actual product is. So it'll be, I mean, I think the PMS consolidation or, who's going to survive. So, Jamie, I know you guys got a PMS. You got to just start throwing your own user conference, make it the F1 of F1 races or the Monaco race of F1 races,
Yeah. One more thing, and then we'll jump over to Jamie on some of the data. At the opening discussion, Verid was talking about how the industry, we all need to figure out standards because, I think a lot of us that rented a short-term rental down there had a different experience than maybe another one that we recently rented. And her thought was, guests are comparing the stay they're in now with their last good experience, not just the last experience, but the bar keeps getting leveled up. And that's what you're comparing to is the bar, not, the average or the median. And the standards in this space, we are a long way from having hotel-like standards, period. You never know what you're going to get in a rental. It could be great plush sheets and pillows and coffee and no cameras in the living room, or it could be the opposite of all of those. And you just really don't know what you're going to get walking into a rental. And we've seen data that shows guests moving back into hotels. So if we aren't careful and figure this out as an industry together, the push back into hotels is real.
I have to say, and like personally, I just had like an incredible experience in Scotland, and I was like, oh wow, like this kind of hotel hospitality, the luxury, the kind of like personal attention, you just don't get in a short-term rental. And unless you're staying with like a Moving Mountains or something where you're paying, a lot a night to get that kind of service. But then again, the hotel was not cheap. So I think the STRs will continue to win on price, but that experience part, even me, someone who like is such a champion for the industry, I'm like, sometimes the hotel is nicer.
Yeah, I guess one last thought to wrap up the GuestyVal recap. Mexican hospitality and American hospitality is night and day. Like
Agreed.
the amount of service and the attention and the speed, like absolutely incredible to see. And there was a dinner the second night with 550 people, and they probably had 100 waiters, and they were flying around. If you asked for a water or a beer or a new fork or a new plate, it's there within 60 seconds, like, which is ridiculously hard to pull off with that many people. I would never see that in the States. I don't know if you guys have seen an orchestra like that, but kudos to the entire culture for having an incredible hospitality service.
Agreed. Well, so if you didn't get to go this year, this is kind of your push to next year, whatever crazy location they have it in, get your tickets, because it was definitely worth it from an industry perspective. Even if you are not a Guesty user, there was a lot to learn from it. But moving on to the data section, we have kind of two stories that we've been tracking over the last couple of years. And the first big one that has got everybody's attention was the New York STR ban 2 years ago. So Jamie, how successful has this ban been?
Yeah, so I'll just read the Wall Street Journal headline from last week. So Allison Pohl did this article with Kate King. So it's New York's Airbnb crackdown in force for 2 years hasn't improved housing supply. And we've had this ban for 2 years. There was sort of, and they sort of called it out in the article, there was sort of two goals coming out of this legislation. One is this crackdown would remove noisy, disruptive tourists from residential buildings. And the second, that it would protect the city's tight housing supply and promote affordable housing and cause rents to decrease. So two goals. And we can sort of see 2 years later how it's impacted it, at least for short-term rentals. And we've seen supply decrease by 87%. And there was almost 25,000 rentals available for stays less than 30 days. Now we're sitting around 3,800. So that's a massive decrease. And it essentially hasn't increased at all over the past 2 years. And
do you have a chart that shares the price of a hotel room, also the affordability of a hotel room from that date?
And that's the other thing. So hotel prices, so this year we're up 5.5%. Last year we're up almost 7%. So hotel rates have gone up 12.5% over the past 2 years. So that 5.5% this year, overall hotel rates over this past year for the entire US are up 1.5%. So if you remove New York from that, hotel rates were only up 1.2%. So a pretty significant portion of all hotel pricing power right now is coming from New York. And
kudos to the hotel lobby that got this ban in New York City. I'm like, there's obvious reasons why they're incentivized to spread these falsehoods of housing constraints. I mean, housing constraints in New York are real. They're not caused by short-term rentals, though.
Yeah, there's 3.5 million housing units in New York, and restricting access to short-term rentals on 20,000 of them isn't gonna move the needle. And we've seen, and the fastest rents around the country, and rents in New York were up 8%. Vacancies have continued to drop another 0.5%. So housing market's going the wrong direction. So all this effort to ban short-term rentals in New York have essentially done nothing to impact the overall housing market and have meaningfully decreased tourism spend and tourism access in the city. So what's interesting is seeing the different ways Airbnb and the hotel lobbies are sort of presenting it, and both showing it as like a great example of one, why you shouldn't ban short-term rentals, and so all the negative impacts, and then a hotel lobby showing all the great benefits to the hotel sector from doing it, and the ability to raise prices and increase profits. So both sort of presenting it as a success.
Yeah, brilliant strategy. It's no shocker that the hotel lobby in major cities will continue to fight and ban short-term rentals, or try to, in as many markets as they possibly can, because what a success. Up 12% in 2 years, when the majority of the hotel industry is not anywhere close to that. So kudos, hotel lobby.
Yeah, and we've got a chart for it I had made on listings. So this in blue shows for those listening, it's essentially a chart that shows short-term rental listings just over 20,000, and then they decrease to 3,800. And then in orange, we show what actually happened with longer-term rentals. So there was roughly 12,000 pre-local law 18 going into effect, and now there's about 22,000 sort of rentals. So, and one of my big takeaways here in talking with journalists is like, this is almost done nothing to actually change the overall inventories on Airbnb. Like, there's a lot of reasons, and Allison sort of called those out in the Wall Street Journal article, that people sort of don't want to bring their unit into the long-term housing pool. They've got adult children that are away from college that use the property over the summer. There's family that come to visit during the holidays, things like that, where they just have their reasons why they don't want to do 12-month leases. And by restricting their ability to rent out as a short-term rental, it's not changing housing availability. Like, we've only seen a 15% decrease in listings on Airbnb. We've just seen most of them sort of move towards longer term rentals. And what I also love, and I'm Brandy interested in your thoughts on this too, is the changes that Airbnb is calling for. It's like, it's not a complete reversal. It's like, we want to allow private rooms when people are like, a lot of people like rent their room out and when they're not there and they go to the Hamptons over the weekend, like, give some flexibility in terms of renting it out. They want to increase the number of guests allowed from 2 to 4, like, and you think of the reasons why people want to stay in short-term rentals is because they're staying with their family. They're staying with multiple people, like, makes sense. And then allowing internal locks. Like, that was just the most blatant, and I feel like, piece of the law, that you weren't going to allow someone renting out a private room for them to have a lock on their door, and is just, and it's safety, it's comfortability, and staying in a home with someone else, like, is ridiculous.
Yeah, one of the articles, I don't know if it was Skift or the Wall Street Journal, I'll have to check this, but they were talking about how the councils in the outer boroughs, like in Brooklyn and Queens, are pissed because this was how they brought tourism, like tourists, to stay in their neighborhoods, and that there's a real economic impact for that. So I'm like, that's, the charts don't, I'd be curious to see what the tourism drops in like those specific sections are, because that's another kind of loss for this. Like, no, people aren't just visiting those areas anymore. And to the different specifications that Airbnb is asking for, I even, if you have your own, even if it's not just a private room, but you have, I don't know, you want to rent your entire place while you go to the Hamptons for the weekend, or you're out, like, it just, these kind of like property rights issues come into play. Or if you want to say, and if it also, like, some people might have purchased these properties because they're like, oh, I can, like, I'm going to snowbird, so I can just rent that out when I'm not here or whatever. And I can also see having different requirements of where you can have them. If it's a really quiet residential area, I can understand that, just like other cities have those regulations. But like, if you're in kind of like, I don't know, Midtown Manhattan, I don't know, like, that's not like a quiet area, if you're in Greenwich Village, that's not quiet either. It's like, let's have some common sense where we can allow things where it's not going to be any more disruptive than, like the finance bros running around Murray Hill at 2 a.m. So,
yeah. So, and maybe we'll jump over to the other sort of topic. And I think it's a really positive one for our sector and tourism in general. But this is the Bad Bunny residency just ended in Puerto Rico. And the New York Times did a great article that came out on the Sunday paper this weekend. And it really highlights, the headline there really does well, is it's usually Puerto Rico's slow season. This year, Bad Bunny's in town. So, Will, if you could bring up the chart on, this is short-term rental revenue over the past 3 years. So you've got 2023, 2024, like, see, Puerto Rico, like San Juan revenue, like tourism, it's spring, winter demand is really strong. And then you go into August, September, October, November, and it just collapses. It's hurricane season in the Caribbean. Not a whole lot of visitors going there. So essentially what Bad Bunny did was put their residency in San Juan to draw tourists to that market during the low season. And what we've seen is, and it's been incredible, short-term rental revenue during this time has more than doubled versus last year. And it's essentially brought peak pricing, peak revenue generation during a time when it's not there. Moody's estimated that it brought 600,000 attendees and a direct economic impact of $250 million. And he did 30 shows,
which is incredible. That's a physical stamina, physical feat. That's crazy.
Yeah. The era of mega stars getting people and driving real tourism is very true. We got off the plane in Mexico City, and there must have been several dozen people going to the Oasis concerts that were Friday and Saturday night. So event tourism is very real, and kudos to Bad Bunny for finding a time that it can actually significantly impact a down season or a slow part for his home team, his home country. And, a call to all celebrities and bringing things back home. As long as you're not a Nepo baby from one of the wealthy coasts, then I love it. Bring your hometown some good local tourism and put it on the map, and drive more than 2x, 2.5 almost x year over year revenue for slow season. That's such a home run.
They're interviewing people outside of the stadium, where did you come from? How much money did you spend? And you're just listening to these because people are coming in groups, right? And so people spending 30, 40 grand as a group between all your flights, between the hotels, just existing in San Juan, and then people doing other vacations around Puerto Rico. You could also really sense there was this real Puerto Rican pride from everyone going to support their hometown hero, which is so fun. And it's also just so crazy that one person can have that kind of an impact, that he could have taken that tour literally anywhere. And when you have that kind of commercial power, he just achieved something that, we haven't seen, I guess Taylor Swift, but she kind of did that globally rather than in her hometown.
And what I love too is, so you look at the data for July, the first 10 shows, there was zero increase in short-term rental revenue, which is crazy. And then you look in deeper and it's he made the first 10 shows only available to Puerto Rican residents. They had to buy the tickets in person. And he made the first part of the show about Puerto Rico for Puerto Ricans. And then the second half about driving tourism. So, and it really was able to benefit both locals and on two different ways, being able to see their sort of cultural icon and being able to drive incremental tourism revenues.
I know nothing about this guy. Maybe he's not worthy of it, but build the man a statue.
Yeah. Give the man I feel like they probably are. I feel like there's one in progress right now. Yeah. I love that. The hometown hero also giving people a chance to see it before everybody buys out all the tickets is that's a real awesome move. Well, really interesting. We had a lot of travel for the three of us. Interesting week ahead. What do you guys have going on? Anything, or same old, same old?
I'm excited to hear how Jamie does at the Verbo event. I wish I was going to that. Verbo Res Fest has historically put on excellent events. It kind of puttered out during COVID, and this is the remake of it. So, Jamie, I'm excited to hear your updates next week coming back from Austin.
Yep. Fly out to Austin tomorrow for the event on full day Wednesday. So excited to see the Verbo team, hang out with Tim, Larry, and report back. Excited for some big announcements.
Yes, we too. Got to give us some content. And we're also excited for the Skift Global Forum. Will is hard at work there doing all of the production. So I can't wait to hear what people have to say on stage. There's some big names. So stick around through the next week. We'll see what comes out of that forum. And for all of our live listeners, oh, sorry, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, the lineup this year for Skift Global Forum, I haven't seen anything like it. So I am excited to tune in. Wish we were there in person, but also glad not traveling back-to-back weeks.
Yeah,
so we'll be tuning in, and we will have probably more than enough to talk about next Monday.
Yeah, well, to all of our live listeners, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you all next Monday.
Want to stop juggling spreadsheets, calendars, and a dozen apps just to run your rentals? Logify makes it easy. It's an all-in-one toolkit for hosts. Build a direct booking website, automate guest messaging, and keep all your channels in sync. Running your rental business your way has never been simpler. And for Good Morning Hospitality listeners, you can get 20% off any yearly plan with code GMH20. Just check the link in the show notes to get started today.